Creditable for performance from Scotland this afternoon, but in the end well beaten by the Springboks at Murrayfield. Well, hello from the afternoon sports scene team on this derby day in football, and the derbies don't come much bigger than the Old Firm version, and a quite sensational game at Celtic Park this afternoon, because for the champions, Lubomir Moravcik put Celtic ahead in the 11th minute, his first for the Slovakian international in a hooped jersey, and he followed it up with another in the 49th minute. That was after Scott Wilson had been sent off midway through the first half for Rangers. The league leaders were reduced to 10 men. And Celtic capitalised on that. Henrik Larsson on target twice in an incredible second half drama, taking his season's goal tally to 14. Giovanni van Bronckhorst was on the score sheet for Rangers, but a dramatic reversal of form and fortunes for the Old Firm sides. It's currently 4-1 to Celtic. At Pittodrie, Miguel Simão found the net for the second week in succession in the 38th minute for St Johnstone. So Aberdeen in danger of dropping to the foot of the Premier Division table tonight. That's because at Tynecastle, Thomas Flögel has equalised for Hearts after Brazilian Edinho had given Dunfermline an 18th minute lead with his first strike for the EastEnders. If it stays like that, Dunfermline will gain a point and will therefore move off the bottom. And if it stays the same, not a Scotsman will have scored in the Premier League this afternoon. All of the details to come now on Afternoon Sports Scene. Well, they're still playing at Celtic Park. The game kicked off some 5 minutes late to allow the crowd in. And we can actually go to the video printer now and let you see some of the results coming through. Let me just tell you about what's happening at Rugby Park. No scoring there at present. So clearly there will be some change at the top of the Premier League situation at the moment. Rangers will remain on top, but both Kilmarnock and Celtic will be edging towards them. It's St Johnstone 1-0, Miguel Simão, as I say. Celtic incredibly leading 4-1, the champions on song this afternoon. Hearts 1-1 against Dunfermline, and no scoring, as I say, at Kilmarnock. Into the First Division, and some of the big games there for you. League leaders Ayr United, they too are on song today. Gary Teal in the 3rd minute gave them the lead against Airdrie. Glenn Hurst on the 80th minute mark made it 2-0. Falkirk could move up to 3rd tonight because they too are 2-0 up. Goals from John Henry and Brian Hamilton in the 76th minute. Hibs, they are 2-0 up too against Hamilton Accies. I beg your pardon, it's 2-1 because Michael Moore has just scored for Hamilton Accies in the 75th. Latapi has been sent off, and I'm just seeing that it's now 2-2. I will get the scorer for you when I have it. Raith Rovers are 2-0 up against Stranraer. Paul Hartley put them on their way thanks to a penalty in the 20th minute, and there's no scoring at Love Street between St Mirren and Clydebank. As we see some of the scores coming through, 3-1 to Stirling in the Scottish 2nd Division. The goals from Steve Nicholas in the 26th, and Alec Bone has given Stirling those extra 2 goals, a penalty in the 82nd and one in the 89th minute. And if it stays like that, then Stirling Albion will go 4th in the 2nd Division table today. Arbroath 1, Partick Thistle, and I'm just hearing that Mark Burchell has scored a 5th for Celtic. It's now 5-1 at Celtic Park, and I think we're going to have to count the number of years that Rangers have conceded that number of goals. So it's 5-1. Hearts 2, Dunfermline 1. Neil McCann, on his return to the Hearts team, has given the Jam Tarts a 2-1 lead against Dunfermline at Tynecastle this afternoon. So it's all go, isn't it? Full time in Division 3. Stenhousemuir have been beaten 2-1 by Berwick. And the top of the table clash, they're a fascinating encounter at Glebe Park. Brechin, who of course are the last league team not to be beaten this season, they are now trailing, in danger of losing that proud record to leaders Ross County, because Neil Tarrant has put Neil Cooper's side in front. He did so in the 20th minute, and if that's the case, then Ross County would move on to the 36 goals mark. Brechin on 33. Just watching some of the other scores come through. Celtic 5, Rangers 1, just to reiterate for you, and I've been handed a statistic here that Rangers haven't been beaten by that margin since season 1965-66. So a dramatic afternoon indeed. Darren Henderson has scored for Hamilton. Confirmation there of Neil McCann on the 90th minute, giving Hearts what could be a dramatic winner. Full-time result indeed is 2-1 to Dunfermline, 2-1 rather, to Hearts this afternoon. Let me just run through some of these significant results in the Premier League as we see the goal flash from Mark Burchill in the 89th coming up. Celtic 5-1 leading at the moment. Aston Villa look like they will be beaten this afternoon. They are about to lead their unbeaten record. Unlucky 13th game for them. They've been unbeaten in 12 games in the league thus far, but Robbie Fowler for Liverpool has scored a hat-trick. Dion Dublin has scored 2, but it's 4-2 at the moment for Gerard Houlier's side, his second game in charge, and it looks like it's going to be a successful one. But meanwhile, second place Manchester United are losing at Hillsborough. Sheffield Wednesday now 3-1 up on Fergie's side. Goals from Nicholas Alexanderson, 2 from him, and Wim Jonk. Andy Cole got one back in the 29th minute, but at present it's 3-1 to Sheffield Wednesday. As for Arsenal, the champions in the London derby, a very tricky visit to Selhurst Park, and so it's proved, because Efan Okoku made the breakthrough for Wimbledon in the 77th minute. At the moment, the Dons are leading by 1-0. And so at the moment, all 3 of the top teams in the FA Carling Premiership are losing. And so the only team to make progress this afternoon could be Chelsea. At present, they are 3-2 up. Goals from Gianfranco Zola, Gustavo Poyet and Torre Andre Flo in the 56th for the Blues. So it's 3-2 there. Confirmation of the 0-0 scoreline at Rugby Park this afternoon, and yet again Billy Davis's side only beaten once in his reign so far, so Motherwell really picking up the pace, aren't they? Just in case you are just coming in from a match or have just switched on the box, let me just go through some of the Premier Division scores once again, and an incredible scoreline from Celtic Park, because Lubomir Moravcik with his first 2 goals in a hoop jersey for Celtic, and Mark Burchill in the 89th minute has made it 5-1 to Celtic. Not since season 1965-66 have Rangers conceded that number of goals. It started in the 11th minute, Moravcik with his first, a left foot strike for his first goal for Celtic. Then midway through the first half, Scott Wilson, young defender, was sent off for Rangers. And really the floodgates started to open just after the second half began. Moravcik again with an excellent header, which you'll be able to see tonight on Sportscene Match of the Day in the 49th minute, made it 2-0. Then in 51, Henrik Larsson 3-0. Giovanni van Bronckhorst made it 3-1. He got one back 2 minutes later, but the roof rather caved in on the league leaders after that. Henrik Larsson with the 4th and Mark Burchill with a 5th in 89 minutes. So that is the shock scoreline from Celtic Park. Tynecastle, Hearts 2, Dunfermline 1. Neil McCann, as we've been saying, with that winner in the 90th minute for Jim Jeffries' men, and that will take the pressure off at Tynecastle. Edinho had given Dunfermline the lead in 18 minutes. Flugel made it 61 in 61 minutes, 1-1. Kilmarnock against Motherwell, it was 0-0 there, and David McKinnon has the story of that game.
Yes, goalless at Rugby Park. Kilmarnock failing to capitalise and Rangers dropped points. In very blustery conditions, Motherwell started brightest, but gradually Kilmarnock got to grips. And in an action-packed first half, they had at least half a dozen chances for a breakthrough, but the visiting defence stood firm and indeed almost took the lead when Spencer fired inches wide 5 minutes from the break. The second half followed the same pattern as the first, with Kilmarnock surging forward, and they should have scored in 57 minutes with a glorious chance for Paul Wright. McGowan's cross right with the open goal, but he couldn't connect and the chance was lost. Motherwell rarely created any chances, but into the closing minutes they gave the home support a nail-biting finish with 3 great chances, but the game finished goalless, Kilmarnock 0, Motherwell 0.
Thanks, David. These are the full-time scenes at Celtic Park. There's the man who got the 5th for Celtic, Mark Burchill, and surely that takes the pressure off Dr. Joe Venglos. There he is, and his face was a delight to see once his signing, Lubomir Moravcik, had scored the first 2 goals for Celtic this afternoon. So the champions make some ground. They're now 7 points behind Rangers, and that's a famous victory that the Celtic fans will be celebrating, I suspect, for some time. Leeds 4, Charlton 1. That's the scoreline from Elland Road this afternoon, and Leeds really motoring at present under David O'Leary. He'll be happy about that. Blackburn 0, Southampton 2, and that was a very significant game indeed at the bottom of the FA Carling Premiership, because it means that Southampton will overtake Blackburn today and Blackburn will go to the foot of the table. That's a shock scoreline indeed. I can tell you that in that particular game, it was Matt Oakley who gave Southampton the lead in 4 minutes. Don't have the second scorer. Give it to you when I can. Tottenham 2, Nottingham Forest 0. The scorers today for Spurs, Armstrong and Nielsen. That game at Tynecastle, Hearts against Dunfermline, dramatic one at that. Paul Mitchell reports.
And not a traditional derby fixture, but there was no lack of passion or action in the play this afternoon. Dunfermline took the lead after 18 minutes. Roddy McKenzie, deputising for Rousset, failed to cleanly gather, and the alerted Dino was on hand to tap in his first Dunfermline goal. Dunfermline then revelled in holding their lead while being prepared to break in numbers. Andy Smith, header on half-time, was unluckily scrambled away by McKenzie. Dunfermline looking to move 2 ahead. Hearts equalised after an hour. Hamilton robbed Shield, and his cutback rolled across the box, finding its way to Flogel, whose powerful shot clipped the inside of the post on its way in. Momentum swung back Hearts' way, and they gained the winner in injury time. Juanjo and Hamilton combining for McCann to sweep home. You have to feel sorry for the Pars, but Hearts' commitment will be praised by Jim Jeffries. It finished at Tynecastle, Hearts 2, Dunfermline 1.
Thank you. Let's tell you about the game up at Pittodrie. Scott Davey was there. He can describe events between Aberdeen and St Johnstone for us.
Well, the perfect tonic for St Johnstone going into that League Cup final against Rangers next weekend, as they won by 1-0 at Pittodrie, and it's becoming a bit of a habit for them. They did that earlier in the year, and it's now since December 92 since they last lost at the home of Aberdeen. And to make matters more miserable for the Dons, this was supposed to be the celebration of 1 year in charge for Alec Miller today. He has now won just 11 games in his 41 matches in charge of the club, and the goal that decided it came in the 39th minute. It was scored by Portuguese winger Miguel Simão, his third of the season. Paul Kane playing him in, and Simão slipped the ball under the body of Jim Leighton. Ian Jess looked up for it for the Dons. Unfortunately, too few others did. They were a pale shadow of the side that impressed at Ibrox last week, and they slipped to yet another defeat. Aberdeen 0, St Johnstone 1.
Thanks to you, Scott. And let me just tell you how that leaves things at the top of the Premier Division. Rangers now on 30 points. Killie have moved up to within 5. No change in terms of the order. Celtic now on 23 points, so too St Johnstone. Hearts move up from 6th, and at the bottom it's still Dunfermline down there. Aberdeen are also second bottom. Dundee United, of course, play Dundee in the Dundee Derby tomorrow at Tannadice. They too third bottom, all on the 14 points mark. Just let me remind you of the situation in Division 1. Ayr stay top after a 2-0 victory over Airdrie today. Goals from Gary Teal and Glenn Hurst in 3 and 80 minutes, respectively. Hibs 2-2, so they've lost a little bit of ground. Mixu Patalainen with 2 for the Highbees. Latapi was sent off. Falkirk a 2-0 victory over Morton. They move up to 3rd, and Airdrie move down a notch to 4th place. St Mirren on 5th. And the big game in Division 2, there were several of them in fact. Livingston have managed to remain 14 games unbeaten. Ray Stewart's side really in a class of their own at the moment. It's 3-0 last I heard. Their nearest challengers, Inverness Cally Thistle, 1-1. Barry Wilson and Richie McCusker equalising for Clyde for Ronnie McDonald's side in the 80th minute. And the big game in Division 3, just in case you haven't heard, has finished 1-0 to Ross County. Neil Tarrant with that all-important goal for County in the 20th minute, and that means that Ross County go top on their own in Division 3. Let's get a full classified results check.
The FA Carling Premiership, the Aston Villa-Liverpool match is a late result. Blackburn Rovers 0, Southampton 2, Leeds United 4, Charlton Athletic 1, Leicester City 2, Chelsea 4, Middlesbrough 2, Coventry City 0. Sheffield Wednesday 3, Manchester United 1. Tottenham Hotspur 2, Nottingham Forest 0. Wimbledon 1, Arsenal 0. The Nationwide Football League Division 1, Bristol City 1, Stockport County 1. Bury 1, Grimsby Town 0. Huddersfield Town 2, Bradford City 1. Ipswich Town 0, Bolton Wanderers 1. Oxford United 2, Port Vale 1. Portsmouth 2, West Bromwich Albion 1. Queen's Park Rangers 1, Sheffield United 2. Sunderland 2, Barnsley 3. Swindon Town 2, Crystal Palace 0. Tranmere Rovers 1, Norwich City 3. Watford 4, Crewe Alexandra 2. League Division 2, Bournemouth 5, Burnley 0. Blackpool 0, Preston North End 0. Fulham 2, Chesterfield 1. Lincoln City 2, Luton Town 2. Macclesfield Town 1, Walsall 1. Manchester City 0, Gillingham 0. Millwall 1, Bristol Rovers 1. Northampton Town 0, Reading 1. Notts County 1, Colchester United 3. Oldham Athletic 3, Wrexham 2. Stoke City 2, York City 0. Wigan Athletic 0, Wycombe Wanderers 0. League Division 3, Brighton 0, Halifax Town 1. Cambridge United 2, Darlington 1. Carlisle United 0, Rotherham United 0. Chester City 1, Rochdale 1. Exeter City 0, Shrewsbury Town 1. Leyton Orient against Brentford is a late result. Scarborough 1, Hartlepool United 2. Scunthorpe United 3, Hull City 2. Southend United 1, Plymouth Argyle 0. Torquay United 0, Peterborough United 1. The Scottish Premier League, Aberdeen 0, St Johnstone 1. Celtic 5, Rangers 1. Dundee United against Dundee is playing tomorrow, the Pools panel say a home win. Heart of Midlothian 2, Dunfermline Athletic 1. Kilmarnock 0, Motherwell 0. Scottish First Division, Airdrieonians 0, Ayr United 2. Greenock Morton 0, Falkirk 3. Hamilton Academical 2, Hibernian 2. Wraith Rovers 2, Stranraer 0. St Mirren 0, Clydebank 0. Scottish Second Division, Arbroath 1, Partick Thistle 0. Inverness Caledonian Thistle 1, Clyde 1. Livingston 2, Alloa Athletic 1. Queen of the South 0, East Fife 0. Stirling Albion 3, Forth Athletic 1. In the Scottish Third Division, Brecon City 0, Ross County 1. Cowdenbeath 2, Albion Rovers 3. Dumbarton against Montrose postponed. East Stirlingshire 1, Queen's Park 1. Stanhousemuir 1, Berwick Rangers 2.
Well, what an afternoon it was at Celtic Park today. Rob McLean, I suspect, has just got his breath back and can tell us about a very eventful Old Firm derby.
I got my breath back, Hazel. I'm not sure about the voice, though. A lot of people wrote off Celtic in the second Old Firm match of the season. How wrong they were. Celtic took the decision of pitching Lubo Moravcik, the Slovakian, up front alongside Henrik Larsson, and it worked an absolute treat with Alan Stubbs back at the heart of defence and new Swede Johan Mjällby there alongside him. They were very solid at the back and very dangerous going forward right from the start. And after 12 minutes, they took the lead. Simon Donnelly played the ball across the edge of the penalty box. It was dummied by Henrik Larsson, and it was hammered home by Moravcik. His first goal for Celtic, and how he enjoyed that one. More drama midway through the first half when young Rangers defender Scott Wilson was sent off for a reckless challenge on behind from Moravcik. So it was 11 against 10 from that point onward, and Henrik Larsson had a great chance to make it 2 for Celtic. Henrik Larsson. So O'Donnell can leave it to Lubo Moravcik. O'Donnell again, early ball in, Larsson! What a chance that was for number 2 for Celtic. Rangers kept it tight and they had chances of their own, but it really caved in for them at the start of the second half. Moravcik headed in his second goal, then Henrik Larsson scored to make it 3. Rangers pulled one back, an expertly taken free kick by Giovanni van Bronckhorst. That was 3-1, but almost immediately it was 4-1 as Henrik Larsson scored again for Celtic, 2 for him, and that taking his season's tally to 13. Rangers were ragged by that stage, and right at the end, Mark Burchill, the 18-year-old, came on as a sub for Moravcik. He raced away, set up by Larsson, hammered home a left-foot shot, and that was 5-1. Celtic feared before this match that the Premier lead might be opened up to a gap of 13 points. What they've done now is closed it to 7, a big boost for them as they try to retain this Premier title.
Thanks, Rob, and let's just confirm exactly how that leaves the Premier Division table. This is the look of it tonight after some significant action, as you've heard. Rangers still top, but only by the 5 points now from Killie, who drew. Celtic move up, so too St Johnstone after their 1-0 victory over Aberdeen. At the bottom, no change in the bottom 4. It's still Dundee, Dundee United, Aberdeen and Dunfermline. Both of the bottom 2 lost this afternoon. Well, into Division 1, Hibs lost ground last week after their match was postponed. They lost even further ground today away at Hamilton. Bill Moulds reports.
The points were shared here at Firhill in a game that at one point Hibs looked to have tied up. A double from Mick Zapata-Line and one in each half had given Hibs a 2-goal lead with 30 minutes remaining. And although they were down to 10 men, Russell Latapi having been red carded 5 minutes into the second half, they didn't seem to be under any pressure from shot-shy Accies. But with 15 minutes remaining, substitute Michael Moore threw Hamilton a lifeline when he turned in a cross from Stephen Thompson. Lifted by that goal, Accies took the game to Hibs, and with 2 minutes remaining, Darren Henderson headed through a packed goalmouth past the unsighted Gutskalskin and Hibs goals to salvage a point for the Accies. Hamilton High Academicals 2, Hibernian 2.
Well, Ayr United went top for the first time in 8 years last week. They appear to be enjoying it. If results at the Shibury Excelsior are anything to go by today, Stuart Thompson reports.
Glenhurst secured the points for Ayr in 80 minutes with a diving header which went in off the underside of the bar. The Somerset side took the lead in the 3rd minute with a delightful left foot strike from Gary Teal and could have been further ahead a few minutes later when an Andy Walker shot came back off the post. This was closely followed by a Teal drive which brought out a good save from Martin. Airdrie battled hard in the second half, and although they had the majority of pressure, they only created one clear-cut chance. Steve McCormick forcing Nelson to tip a header over the bar. So Ayr maintain their lead at the top of the table, and Airdrie have now gone 3 games without a win. The final score, Airdrie 0, Ayr United 2.
Thanks, Stuart. Let's get our last report from the First Division. Morton against Falkirk. Ian Turner reports from Capello.
Final score, Morton 0, Falkirk 3. Falkirk kept themselves in contention at the top of the First Division with this convincing win over a Morton side which still has great trouble converting possession into goals. John Henry, on loan from Kilmarnock, grabbed Falkirk's opener 2 minutes from half-time when he beat Ali Maxwell with a low 20-yard drive, and goals from Brian Hamilton 15 minutes from time and Peter Duffield 4 minutes into injury time sealed the victory. The spirit of the match was dampened somewhat just after the interval when, following a heavy clash of heads, Falkirk's Marino Keith and Morton's Derek Collins had to be stretchered from the field. Final score, Morton 0, Falkirk 3.
Thanks, Ian, and this is how it leaves the First Division table right now. Ayr United on 32 points. They're now 3 points ahead of Hibs. Falkirk 29 points too, and they move up to 3rd. Airdrie on the 27 points mark, and St Mirren on 24. Stranraer still foot of the table. Well, let's have a look at tonight's match of the day. It features the big game from Celtic Park, the Old Firm derby, and that's definitely one not to be missed. An exciting afternoon at Celtic Park. And we'll have action from Pittodrie, Aberdeen against St Johnstone, and as all creditable for performance from Scotland this afternoon, but in the end well beaten by the Springboks at Murrayfield. Well, hello from the afternoon sports scene team on this derby day in football, and the derbies don't come much bigger than the Old Firm version, and a quite sensational game at Celtic Park this afternoon, because for the champions, Lubomir Moravcik put Celtic ahead in the 11th minute, is first for the Slovakian international in a hooped jersey, and he followed it up with another in the 49th minute. That was after Scott Wilson had been sent off midway through the first half for Rangers. The league leaders were reduced to 10 men. And Celtic capitalised on that. Henrik Larsson on target twice in an incredible second half drama, taking his season's goal tally to 14. Giovanni van Bronckhorst was on the score sheet for Rangers, but a dramatic reversal of form and fortunes for the Old Firm sides. It's currently 4-1 to Celtic. At Pittodrie, Miguel Simao found the net for the second week in succession in the 38th minute for St Johnstone. So Aberdeen...
The pressure's on tonight in Casualty at 8:05.
Oh no, get off it!
In Airport at 9, someone's celebrating.
Where is it?
And at 9:30,
Someone's watching us.
unnatural happenings in the X-Files. Tonight on BBC1.
Extreme situations.
Crash phase. State one.
Extreme locations.
I've never seen anything like it. We just shot away. The depth gauge was just spinning around.
Extraordinary people.
There were bits of cars everywhere, nose cones, wheels, bits of suspension.
A new series explores critical decisions and life-saving actions made at the limits of human endeavour. In Extreme Danger starts Friday 8:30 on BBC1.
Hello, Hello is in 15 minutes after an early evening news summary on BBC1 Scotland Now with Fiona Bruce. It's 5:10.
Renewed tension in the Middle East as Iraq refuses to hand key documents over to UN weapons inspectors. The inspectors continue their work, but Downing Street describes the Iraqi move as a bad sign. Thousands of cans of tomatoes are withdrawn from sale after concerns about high levels of tin. And Australia take control in the first test. Good evening. A fresh crisis is looming between Iraq and the United Nations following Baghdad's refusal to hand over documents to UN weapons inspectors. Downing Street says the refusal, just a week after Iraq let the inspectors back in, is a bad sign. Iraq says some of the documents never existed, while others are not relevant to the inspectors' work.
Saddam Hussein is goading the West once again. Only 5 days after weapons inspectors restarted work, the UN has given details of Iraq's refusal to hand over a string of documents. The inspectors suspect they would prove the regime is hiding poison gas and biological weapons. President Clinton in South Korea isn't yet threatening to attack, but is stressing this is no way for Iraq to get sanctions lifted.
They have to give the information on the documents. And the longer they take to come up with the information on the documents and get to the bottom of this, the harder it's going to be to convince everyone else that they should get what they want.
And one of those documents the UN is demanding lists the missiles and shells which Iraq fired during its 8 years war with Iran in the 1980s. The figures are crucial. UN inspectors believe Iraq is now exaggerating the amounts actually fired to help hide ammunition left over. It could now be filled with chemical or biological agents. Last Monday in the Commons, the Prime Minister insisted Iraq would get no warning of any future attack if it blocked the UN inspectors again. Today, Downing Street said the refusal to hand over documents was regarded as a bad sign, and Tony Blair was studying the situation extremely carefully. The opposition is pressing him to act.
If you can't follow through on threats of this kind, you shouldn't make